Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth? Looks like I underestimated y'all. I hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, if you only have as persistent then as you are today, we all wouldn't have been here now, would we? Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did. All of it. Alright. It seems the time has come. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. Unexpected Officer Meekins, I knocked him out and managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on the camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. So the supposed victim was really you. But there's one thing I still don't understand. Traces of large quantities of blood were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be? Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. My guess is he's the donor. It was way too much blood for a small donation. I had to do it. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. When you say it, you mean... You even have to ask, partner? The SO9 incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to completely end with the transfer that day. Not if I had anything to do with it. That incident's not over. But what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only that case's lead detective can go through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at myself one more time. No matter what the cost. I didn't care what anyone says, partner, that case is mine. Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation, so why did they care so much about it? That day was my last chance. That's why I stole the detective's ID, and just like him, I planned to take out the evidence. Why did you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman? If I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transfer, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere. So you did it to fool the security camera. And the detective's ID card? I stole that the morning of the incident. So that really was why Goodman started filling out the lost item report. I returned his ID card, left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office parking lot. The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall. So, essentially, you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. What do you mean, partner? I mean the fingerprint-activated lock, of course. And no matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to open that locker yourself. But he could because a rubber glove just happened to get stuck in the door. That means Detective Goodman must have opened that locker before Officer Marshall. Wasn't expecting Officer Meekins, I knocked him out. You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off! Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a one-in-a-million type of person, mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID. I'll have to think a little more about his raise this year. When did Edwards get so much influence? Well, he is the one in charge of the chief prosecutor, Miss Lana Sky, so... Anyway, he threw himself at me and I ended up cutting him slightly. I'm sorry I had to turn out that way. It was me knocking him out and everything. By the way, what happened to your knife? Oh, you mean this one? I don't know what to say! So you knocked Officer Meekins out and... managed to escape. I knew which areas want to be caught on the camera. So, you did your research beforehand. Those who go into the desert unprepared don't live long, partner. I don't think it would have made a difference though. The security tape is erased every 6 hours. And all gone as planned. No footage would have been left. However, You bloodied your code with your struggle with Officer Minkins. Someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. He opened my locker and stashed it in there. What was Officer Minkins doing during that time? What else? He was sleeping like a baby. So you're saying is on that day, there wasn't any blood at the evidence room at 5:15. But the blood found at the scene certainly indicates a crime took place. What, are you blind? The victim shown on the tape is me, and I'm not dead yet, partner. So you stole the evidence from the locker? Actually, no, I didn't. Why not? When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone. What? Mr. Edwards, where is that evidence? It's still missing, Your Honor. Detective Goodman's locker was already empty? Someone else stole the evidence? Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing? Fire away, partner. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer. Why did you do this? Stealing a detective's ID? Injuring a police officer? This is no small offense! Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. It can't just be forgotten with a simple cut in salary, or forgiven. Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case. This is one of mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer. Get an answer I'm satisfied with. The witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more. It's about his brother. But the case was solved 2 years ago, wasn't it? That's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room. Joe Dark was convicted for his crime. One thing I can say for sure is he deserved his sentence. I remember Joe Dark's case. It involved serial murder, didn't it? I don't intend to complain about how it turned out, but there's something that still bothers me. Something went down on that trial. Something no one will talk about. What happened? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why is he so concerned about that incident? Maybe I should present with what I think is his real reason is. I had a feeling we'd wind up here sooner or later. Everyone involved here is related in some way to that case. Better take another look at the files. Oh, shoot. 2, 3, 4, 5. What page is it? Second page. Victims. Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the SO9 incident. Sound like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner. I have the SO9 incident file here. The name Marshall is mentioned in here. In a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man? Neil Marshall? Yeah. I'm sure you heard that name. I'm sure you heard the name 2 years ago. He received the same lousy prosecutor award you got. What? A prosecutor? You must be talking about the King of Prosecutors Award. Now I remember. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the SO9 case before I did. That's right. He was killed. And the case fell into your hands. But what's his relation to you? He was my brother. He was investigating the murders was Damon Gant, the then Deputy Chief of Police. The group of detectives I was part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. Joe Dark. My brother fought Dark and was killed. Not the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed. He was arraigned and incarcerated. The case was finally closed. At least according to the police records. What do you mean? My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Doc. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it. That's your reason for your insane actions. There's more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing is certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of the crime. That was the last day the SO9 case could be reopened. Not satisfied with the resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day. The things that happen by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department. Chance? It's gotta be more than just that. So if no one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime, that means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one. Which in turn means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. But wait! A verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department. It seems to me this boy's got the draw on you, partner. All the mysteries at the police department have been resolved, no doubt about it. Our sole murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Skye. And the testimony of one Miss Angel Starr is completely incontestable. If you have a response, make a single word or less. I rest my case. It seems the trial has reached its conclusion. There is no room for doubt. Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time. Disproving the alleged murder at the police department. There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security camera tape really was fake, but I didn't realize that would end up proving Lana guilty. Now then, the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant. Your Honor, wait! Emma? The defense has an objection, a scientific objection, right? What do you mean, right? Mr. Wright, are you this girl's guardian? Your Honor, Please, Your Honor, all I'm asking is for a minute of your time. Please hear me out. Mr. Edwards, please. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute, I'll give you 3. I was kind of in shock. I mean, finding out the SO9 incident referred to the Joe Dog killings. Now that she mentions it, the names of those Skye sisters were in that file. But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day. So I knew his fingerprints had nothing to do with the crime. And that left only one thing. The other handprint. You mean the traces of blood found on Detective Gumshoe's locker? But no fingerprints were found on it, right? No, but I figured if I examined it scientifically, I'd be sure to find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again. Did you find something? No. Huh? Sorry. I guess I'm not much of a scientific investigator after all. Is that all? Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student. And I'm just an attorney. But Mr. Wright, Those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If we can't find something wrong with them, please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lana, it's you. Me? Oh boy. Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright. With regards to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain? It appears the defense is troubled by the other bloody mark. Looking at the floor plans, a handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Mr. Wright, I'm sorry, I can't be of more use. But still, if you can't find anything wrong with that blood mark, Lana will be... Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day. Yes, Your Honor. If ever I needed to be if ever I needed to concentrate, it's now. What could be wrong with that handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Could there be something I'm missing? Yes, whatchamacallit I think was blocking it, the Blue Badger. This handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. The only thing that seems clear is you're grasping, Mr. Wright. You've been staring pretty intensely at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Yes, this is strange. Take a good look at the floor plans. Something is missing. Missing? You mean something hasn't been drawn on there? Yes, something that, when drawn, will completely change the meaning of the blood mark. Let us fight the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright. With all the evidence here, there's gotta be something I can use. The question is, which item can prove something is missing in the floor plans? What about that piece of plywood? The Blue Badger, mascot of the police force. Defender of truth, guardian of proof. Explain yourself, Mr. Wright. Please look at the floor plans of the crime scene. The Blue Badger is not here. So watch what happens when we place him in... This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well, what? That's right. So long as the Blue Badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint on the spot on the locker. What? So, what exactly does that mean? It means it can't be done. What are you saying? Blood traces are undeniably found on that locker. Don't look at me, I didn't put it there. Mr. Wright, think it through scientifically. Emma. On that afternoon... Officer Minkins was the one who brought the Blue Badger into the evidence room, right? After he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on that locker. So that must mean this blood mark was left there before the Blue Badger was brought in! Shoot, I just dropped my controller. Just one moment. I will not allow such a far-fetched balderdash into my courtroom. It may sound far-fetched, Your Honor, but it is the only possible explanation. On February 21st, in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Minkins cut his hand from which the trivial amount of blood fell. The problem is, the other time. Someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refuse to accept your absurd claim. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. So then, assuming this murder you purport really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show evidence that proves it occurred. When did the first incident occur? To summarize the defense's claim that Prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was posed as Detective Goodman, another incident took place at the evidence room. That's right, the blood mark on the locker proves this. Very well, then tell us, when did this first incident occur? As Mr. Edgeworth said, proof must be presented. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that. Now then, will the defense please present its evidence? I need the time card. If the crime scene took place inside the evidence room, then the killer would have had to enter, and in order to do so, an ID card would have been required. An ID... Oh! The ID card reader! Officer Meekins brought the Blue Badger panel into the evidence room at, let's see here, 4:50. If the crime took place before that time, then it would be 4:40. Miles Edgeworth! Just what have you done? I never would have figured you'd have the nerve, boy. Drop the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out it couldn't have been me. Nope, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either. It's clear from the luminal test that blood was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. It would have been just 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry the body away, and clean the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible. That would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room. Let's look at the chart again. There's only one other card number remaining, 777-77777. I think I had an extra 7 in there. Talk about a lucky number. But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Detective Goodman have entered the evidence room? Since there is no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with 777-7777. Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is 775... That's one 7 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card. At least at present. What? Explain yourself, son. The ID number belongs to someone with a rank of captain or higher. Someone who is a so-called exclusive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire onto such personal identities. But that's ridiculous! Just how? I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There is one situation in which we can guarantee such authority. If an official charge filed against the executive is accepted. An official charge? You're like, aren't you? With your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how the prosecutor's office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate it if you would keep your slander to yourself. Slander, is it? Okay, let me ask you a question. Yes. No, not to you. To her. The defendant's in over there. Your own little executive. Lana? Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course, we've looked up her ID number. And it's not 777-7777. Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I meant to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident. The SL9 incident. Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence? Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor? I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for that trial. At the time, we felt the powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. Lana! I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. But before I realized it, we were the only ones being suppressed by the law. Defendant, just what are you saying? I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigator in that crime, in the eye and say you did? Chief Prosecutor, you didn't! I don't have to, Officer Marshall. Why won't you answer him? Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict we deserved. But Lana! Even if it involved forging evidence. See? That's what I'm talking about. No. No! Order! 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 Long for Mark caused such a stir. Chaos in the courtroom could not have been quelled. The conclusion of the trial would have to wait. I could not read that fast enough. Oh boy, oh boy. I am happy that my original idea was correct about about Goodman being killed at, well, right now. The idea of Goodman being killed, stuffed in Edwards' car, Edwards was sent back over here, and that's where the body was found. Oh, this is really turning out to be interesting. And I would love to continue on, but I don't know if I have enough time today to continue on. So, next time, we're going to go to the Day 3 investigation of this trial. This should definitely be an interesting one.